Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ari, so happy to be here. Um, we are about to reveal our first foray into generative AI. We hope that you enjoy it. But before we start, I really want to kind of take you through kind of the overview of how we came to this new product and why we think it's useful. So, what I'm going to go ahead and do is share my screen right now. So it's up there. Yep, there it is. Okay, thank you very much. All right. So basically, the name of our product is called Dataclay Synthesizer. And what it does is it creates data for you. But let's take a look at what all is covered in this slideshow here. So we've all heard about how AI is going to take over the world and the effect it's going to have on us creatives. But I just kind of want to address that and just give a little bit of information about Dataclay's stance on AI and generative AI in general. And I want to explain the problem that we identified when it came to creative workflows and producing dynamic media. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I just want to define synthetic data as best as I can. I'm no expert in it, but I do have some knowledge about it and just how it applies to creative workflows. And then we'll dive right into a demo of using the synthesizer and how that works with our other tool, Templater for Adobe After Effects. Okay, and so we'll look at some use cases as well. All right, so our apprehensions about AI. We've all heard of all this doomsday kind of stuff. It's going to eliminate our jobs. It lacks a human touch. It'll never match what we do. What's the point? I'm going to be bored. Everything's going to look, if it can do it all. Even if I can't compete, or even if I can compete in quality, not going to be able to compete in quantity, which machines are really good at. And then, of course, the idea that your craft is just going to go nowhere and dwindle into nothing. So, I've heard some of this kind of talk amongst my colleagues. I've seen it on the interwebs out there, but I just kind of want to go through our stance, which has always been since the formation of Dataclay, and that is that, we can be symbiotic with machines and particularly artificial intelligence rather than it feeling like it's taking over or we have no control over it. So if we kind of flip the script, we can really see that AI can ease our jobs if we really allow it. And yes, it can. And the ultimate thing is that we are always behind this technology. So our unique human choices, they all build up to create a human imprint in the work that we build, even if we do tell AI or these generative AI tools what to do. And I think that you really have to recall the moments when you first learned a new technique with all the technologies that came before generative AI, and recall the kind of wow moment that you had with, a new visual effect you developed or came up with. And it's just something to kind of think through when you're using these kinds of new tech. And also, I want you to kind of think through this idea that, AI, generative AI, is really great at helping us explore and helps us it acts as a sounding board in an effect. It allows us to see what is possible. And so, when we build or when we make our content, we always have to remind ourselves that, craft is always changing. It's just, as far as practitioners go, we should never stop practicing. And so even though this new tech is coming about, it's really there for us to kind of tinker with and to figure out how we're going to incorporate it into our workflow. So just keep in mind that, don't be afraid of AI. I think it's a wonderful thing. It's fascinating to see what people are doing with it, and just look for that kind of entry point into what you're currently doing and seeing how it can help you. Okay, so what is the exact problem that we identified? So we have a lot of users building dynamic media, and what we realized is that they all have data that and that they're using to feed into their dynamic media, their authored templates, and that data has to come from somewhere. So the general idea is that as a motion graphics designer or just somebody working with video, you read a creative brief about a template that might need to be developed or created. You go about using the tools that you know so well to develop and author a dynamic template, and you set up dynamic graphics, you set up dynamic AV elements. But then the final step is really you need that data. You have to figure out how to structure it and where it's going to come from, and you got to get it as close to reality as possible for the specific template you're building. And what we realized from our customers and seeing kind of where they stop in this process is that structuring and gathering the data actually requires a lot of non-creative work. It's an arduous task. You have to think through certain fields or columns, if you will. You have to come up with a variety of data that actually makes sense for the template you're building before you can actually see it operate and see it work. And so that's kind of the problem we want to solve with Synthesizer. And so, there's this idea of data synthesis or synthetic data, and we shouldn't forget that data in its rawest form is not real information. You have to apply structure to data to make it into information, to get things out of it, to evaluate it and things like that. But really, what synthetic data is it's artificially manufactured data that, instead of coming from the real world, it is it's created through the use of AI, and it is primarily used to improve existing AI models, and to protect sensitive data, and also to mitigate any biases that these machines are studying on data to make better AI models for us. So that's kind of where it emerged from, and why it's kind of a hot topic right now. Now, it's important to remember that synthetic data is not necessarily accurate, meaning it's not going to be true all the time. And it acts more as a scaffolding, especially in the creative world for creatives and building dynamic media. So I think that the primary thing to recall here is that it's not real. It is generated, and so what I'm going to show you in the demo, it's not necessarily going to be real, and anything that seems to be real is kind of happenstance. So Synthesizer's initially going to be shipping as a Google Sheet extension, and we are going to integrate it with Templater more tightly. So we are going to now hop into Google Sheets, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what it does. So here's my Google Sheet right here. I'm going to go ahead and hide this. And on the right side here is the Synthesizer. So this is kind of like it's a tool that will exist inside of a spreadsheet, and it'll take more forms as we hear user feedback. Like I said, it'll be more tightly integrated into Templater, but it'll show up elsewhere. And so you can tell it whatever you want to get whatever data you want through natural language prompting. And down here, what we have is some sample prompts here. And you can see something like, give me a data set of IKEA furniture sold in 2009, for example. So when you click that, it goes up into this field here. And you can click on, or you can go to the basic customization. And by default, it creates 25 rows. You can create more if you want. And this auto formatting I'll get to in a little bit, but if we just hit synthesize data, that's all we have to do is we type in something here and hit synthesize data. What happens here is you're going to see the synthesizer actually coming up with what it thinks it should be for this prompt here. So this is kind of, it's coming up with a price category, it's coming with a product name, and it does have a pretty good take on these IKEA furniture type names, right? This location, not sure why it came up with that, but really what I wanted to show you is that you can really get as simplistic as you want with these prompts, or you can get very, very specific. I should also state that every time you click on synthesize data, it's going to annihilate everything in your sheet. So for example, here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is say, give me a data set of IKEA furniture sold in 2009, period. Please use columns named, and then you can say, furniture, or, furniture name, price, date released. You could say furniture type. You can say something like designer name. And let's just hit synthesize. So now it has a little bit more information about what specific columns it's gonna use right here. So now I have the furniture name, and then it's a little bit more accurate, like in terms of what I want, what structure I want. And you can see the furniture type, it really does know about, okay, this Linman desk is a desk, Harmony's nightstand is a nightstand, and then we can see who created it at IKEA, when it was first released, which again, I must stress that this data is not necessarily accurate. And so when we create it, we have this note up here, which is a disclaimer telling us that, this data is synthetically created from an LLM. It's not intended to be true. It just helps you give you scaffolding. So one thing I want to point out is that, this price column, once it creates the number, because we're in Sheets, then we can go into here and do things to it. Like we can actually make it into a currency, and then, manipulate it in terms of the date. We can go into the date area, and say, we can change the date format to this, for example. So, the synthesizer creates all of this, and then we can see what's happening here. Now, one thing that's really cool is that, you can do things like also ask it for color. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is show you an example of something that's really interesting, which is, let's say we want all the NBA teams and we want all the colors of those teams, for example. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I need all the NBA teams, and please provide me with the following. Team name, you can say team city, team venue, and then you can say, let's say, not just the city, but team state, team venue, and then we want to do team primary color, team secondary color, and team tertiary color. We also want the name of the coach and the name of our star player. Let's say just star player name. The other thing I want to tell it is that I want the colors in hex code. So I'm going to say provide all colors as hex code values. So I'm going to go ahead and click synthesize. This will all get eliminated. Now we are working out some bugs, and so sometimes it does kind of hiccup. But you can kind of see here, we're talking about team name, and then all the team names come up, the venue for where their home team is, and then we have these colors. Now, what's really cool is if you have this auto formatting on, what it's going to do is it's going to, I'm going to kind of zoom out here a little bit. It's going to colorize the cells with the background color for this is, that we can use inside of something like Templater. So what I've done here is I want to point out, I want to give a shout out to Baller Effects, Justin Peterson, who is an amazing designer doing a lot of sports stuff. This is his template store. He's selling Mogerts. And today I bought this Mogert because, right now our synthesizer is only creating structured text, and it's not really doing anything in terms of images. but I kind of like this one. And when you click it, you can kind of see some details about it. He explains how it works. And so I was able to open this guy up into After Effects. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to link it to all of that data that Synthesizer just created. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on the sample here, which is the one that was just created. I'm going to hit link worksheet. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is go back to my sheet here. And I'm going to make sure that team primary color, secondary color, and tertiary color and team name are all mapped. So inside of the After Effects panel right here, I've done a little bit of, it's not a autograph, a Dataclay autograph. This is more of a Mogurt. But you can see that if I go into here, I've got the team name and I've got the templater settings effect up here. And then I've got the secondary color and the team primary color as text layers that are hidden. And those are mapped to expressions that are controlling the colors here. And then over here, I've got the team tertiary color here. So I kind of did this prior to, the podcast, but I just kind of want to show you, as I iterate through here, I'm actually getting, the text of the team name and the secondary color and the tertiary, the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors showing up here. So now what I can do is just go here to a frame that I really like and say, you know what, I want to see this frame as spot checked, right? I want to get just this frame for all of the data rows. And I'm going to go ahead and say, make sure I've got my destination set. And here it is. And that's for another one. There's the folder there. And then we're just going to do spot check. And what this is going to go ahead and do is, it needs a target composition. So this flowing text layered, I'm going to go to the preferences, go to the target composition, choose that one, and then spot check this guy. And it's going to go into all of the rows, and I get to kind of see how each one is going to look with all this synthetic data. And this helps me as a creative developer, a creative director, to understand is this working out of the box? And I can review it and say, you know what, this is totally inaccurate. And I can now go back into the sheet and change the ones that are not actually, accurate. But it gives me a starting place, right? That's what I was mentioning earlier. It gives you a scaffolding of data that you can start to work with, and just kind of see, how your design is working. Okay, so that's one example. And then another example was this idea of just using countries. And so I have this other project. I'm gonna go ahead and save this guy and open the recent flag. And this is just kind of a, effects heavy, After Effects project using, it's got some rigging going on here. And if I look into this pick area, it's got these flag color 1, 2, and 3. And then it's also got this layer here, which has the country name. And all of these have the templater settings effect on them. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go back to my synthesizer, because I want to see how, this design might look for all the different countries, or several different countries, let's say. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and, get rid of this prompt. And I'm going to say I'd like a data set containing, the countries and their flag colors. Column names, let's say column names should include country name. And notice that I'm using the names of the layers inside of the After Effects project. Country name, and then let's see what else I named that I forgot. It's flag color 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to say flag color 1, flag color 2, flag color 3. And then I can't forget, provide the colors as hex codes. Okay, so we've got this prompt here, and we're going to hit synthesize data. And again, this is all going to get annihilated, and then everything else is going to get written over. So here we're seeing we've got the country name, and then we've got the flag color 1, 2, and 3. Once it's done with the default 25 rows, it's going to color them. And so what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to connect, well, After Effects is already connected to the sample worksheet. So we should be able just to go here and kind of iterate through these and kind of see what's going on. So here we can see, that's Brazil's colors. Then we have India's colors. We have, Canada's colors, which is totally off base. Sorry, Canada. And then, Australia, and so on and so forth. So again, I can't stress enough that synthetic data isn't necessarily true. It's not necessarily accurate. But as far as designers go, creating data is not it's an arduous task. It's not just the collection of it, but it's also the structuring of it. And so with Synthesizer, you don't necessarily have to use such details and getting the column names. You can just say, for example, in these sample prompts, for example, I want to get United States unemployment and compensation for 2011. You can synthesize that, and it will try its best to create a structure for you. And so from the structure, that'll give you some sense of what you can make dynamic inside of your creative work. So it can kind of go both ways. Another example is if we bring in, I've done some prompts here where you can not only be, having a generalized prompt and talk about what columns you want, you can have specific descriptions of what you want in those columns. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and, copy this, paste it into here, and then hit synthesize. And we can see that, each column, it's going to be named accordingly, but then with the way that I've structured it, it's going to try and be a little bit more accurate as to the name. So you can, for example, here, instead of just saying Celtics, Raptors, Heat, Warriors, 76ers, Bulls, it literally has Boston Celtics, Toronto Raptors. And that's because if we look over here, the team name has a descriptor here. So please provide the following data, and then here's the column name, colon, and then here's more details about that data that I want. So the more accurate you are with your prompt and the more intense you get with it, the more accurate, or the more, I should say, closer to accurate you're going to get with your data. And so that's effectively Synthesizer. And so what I want to do is just, if anybody's out there on the interwebs, I'm not sure how many people are with us today, but if you have a prompt that you just kind of want to see what happens there with Synthesizer, I'm happy to share it. So does anybody have any suggestions? Alan, do you see any responses for this?
We'll wait for responses to come in. We do have about 12 people currently.
Okay.
We, just to let you know, and anybody that's watching, you're already aware, our LinkedIn connection, there was some sort of technical failure on the LinkedIn side. So LinkedIn is not streaming live, but we do have 12 people watching from YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Twitter viewers, you can't comment. Twitter doesn't allow, or the X platform doesn't allow you to comment from there. So if you want to make a comment, please jump over to Facebook or to YouTube. I do see we have from earlier just someone introducing themselves on YouTube. So I know that the comment is working. We'll just wait and see if anybody can suggest a prompt for us.
Okay. All right. Okay. So while we're waiting, or if nobody wants to chime in, we can demonstrate a little bit more. But it's I think that it's an interesting, if we look at these other sample prompts, we can say most popular cars purchased in the United States between 1991 and 2021. And then we have all these include make, model, color, year, price, synthesize it, and let's see what it comes back with. And you can see that right there. So there's a number of different use cases. Like, again, some of these aren't accurate, like, $6,000 for a Chevrolet Cruze in 1997. probably not accurate at that time, but still, you've got some data there that is relatively different from all these other entries here, which can really help also with things like testing out, how your data is going to look in your visual representation inside of the project. Like, if something has 10 characters as opposed to 20 characters, how's that going to look? So instead of necessarily just going through the motions of typing it out, you can start with a basis, a scaffolding, and then get right into it for the creative side. So the other point that I want to make is that right now I mentioned that it's coming out as an extension for Sheets. But in the future, what's going to happen is we are going to have a built-in option for you to, well, we can't get rid of this because now we're on this different sample. But my point is that we can go into After Effects, specify certain things we want within the layers that have the templator settings, and then from the templator panel, we'll be able to create the synthetic data from the work that you've done inside of AE. So that's kind of where it's headed. And now I kind of feel bad for Canada over here. So I'm going to move away from that.
So, all right, we do have Nico is basically bringing up a point or asking a question of, I guess you can get on the prompt URLs to images to connect directly into the template. Do you want to explain how Synthesizer, the limitations currently?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Nico. Basically, if you have something like, let's talk weather data, and you want an icon for the weather, you can tell Synthesizer that you want a file to be a choice for one of your columns or for one of your properties, and then you can go and create that file. If you want, you can also tell it that you want it to be a URL to a image, and it'll create like a fake URL. So we could say, I need weather data for, or a 5-day forecast of typical summer weather in, let's say, I don't know, Orlando, Florida, something like that. Please include highs or high-low weather condition and a column for an icon file for weather condition. And so let's see if that does what we expect, where it would put in a file name inside of the thing there. So if we look up here, you can see that we've got the weather's coming in at the highs and lows. We have the weather condition, and then we have a PNG here. So technically, you could go and create files that have this, and then when you link up Templater to look at footage files for a specific footage layer, it would pull these actual layer names. You can also say something like, I need, something like stock data for S&P 500 index. Please include, stock price, trading volume, and a percent change, and a URL to a logo for the stock company. Let's see what happens there. So what happens here is more than likely for the URL to the logo, you can see that it's trying its best, right? Like it's this is what it's doing here. So it's not accurate. I think over time we'll work on things to kind of make this a little bit better for images. I think the idea here would be to have a way to create the file names and then maybe concatenate a URL where all those files are hosted if you have it if they are being hosted. So it's
So,
not as powerful as we want it to be for images right now, but this is something that we are definitely developing. So I hope
all
that
right,
answered
Nico
your
has a
question.
follow-up. Nico's follow-up was, I guess images still need to be local. Do you want to talk about how Templater works in terms of using URLs versus local, locally stored images, just to kind of, for people who maybe don't understand the Templater side and what images it can access?
Sure. Yeah. So the URLs to footage assets, what happens there is whenever you bring in an asset, or whenever you have a reference to an asset that's hosted somewhere, Templater attempts to download it to the local machine and then import it into the templates, into the template file. So you can have an HTTP or a URL as a reference to an image, or you can have it just be the file name, which in that case, Templater would expect it to be on the local device. So that's kind of the difference there.
Something to mention, Ari, with Templater 3, there's some new formats that you're able to access via URL that used to not be possible. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, it's that the way we've implemented kind of a detection step. If you have a URL that doesn't have an extension, or it's a share URL from one of these like sync folder services, Templater will now take the asset, examine it before it imports it into After Effects, and kind of devise. It'll determine it'll do its best guess on what file type it is, and then bring it in. So it used to be where you would have to have an actual extension in the URL for Templater to even know what kind of file it is, but you no longer need that because of that analysis of the MIME, what's called the MIME type. So
That was a
yeah,
long time requested feature. So I
yeah,
wanted to mention that in case any of our users or old users who aren't familiar with some of the updates.
definitely, definitely. There are some new updates coming, but I don't want to get into it in this show. We'll demo it in another one. But I think if there's no other questions or no asks for synthetic data here in the sheet, I'm going to stop here, and we can take your questions later on. So yeah. Thank you so much for taking a look at what we've been building in the dungeon here. We look forward to getting it out there and sharing it with the community, see what you all build with it. All right. Well, thanks so much. And thanks, Alan, for the technical stuff. We'll be in touch.